The Spirituality Now podcast is sponsored by Delaflor Teachings International, a spiritual and systemic coaching and consulting company with the mission to help individuals, businesses, and corporations create brilliant futures through sustainable transformation. Also sponsored by the Network for Human Empowerment, a philanthropic TV network that serves Spanish-speaking communities with free, conscious education aimed to empower individuals to become the best versions of themselves.
Welcome to the Spirituality Now podcast, a podcast committed to supporting you in your journey to life mastery and personal enlightenment. Welcome to the Spirituality Now podcast. My name is Yvonne de la Flor, and I'm pretty relaxed today. I don't know if you can feel it. I'm hoping I'm not getting you asleep already. You know, a lot of people that work with me, they begin to slow down so much and I'm like, hey, wake up, wake up, wake up. So I have my good Mexican energy that if needed, I will use as a resource just to keep the fire going, keep the conversation going or the flowversation going, because I have an incredible guest here today, one of my allies, deep friends, a man really imbued with wisdom, but not a wisdom that is acquired, which is AKA knowledge that you accumulate through reading stuff, but of experience. He has gone through some of the most deep, challenging, mystical experiences that I know, has a real sense of devotion and reverence for his experiences, and he's a man of wisdom. And this is the second time that we go in the rodeo of, hey, let's record the podcast, and the system actually works. So we are praying for the podcast gods, which is systems and internets and all of that. And we're trusting the flow of it all. Anyways, let me introduce you to my guest. My beloved guest name is Mr. John Grillo. John, is that how I say your last name? Because in Mexico, we will say it Grillo.
Yeah, I took 4 years of Spanish in high school and then another semester or two in college. And I know the double L-Y sound. And
Okay.
I guess but with Italian, it's, we've always known it as Grillo, hard L, right? Grillo. But I know anytime
we'll
I
go
meet a Spanish
Grillo.
person, they say Grillo.
Okay. Yeah, I know. So everybody, this is the first time that I introduce someone and I have to ask them about their last name. So John Grillo is the president of JG Bold Coaching, a coaching firm dedicated to helping midlife men overcome their limiting beliefs regarding their fitness, finances, and futures. John believes his best days are ahead of him and instills that belief in his clients. His tagline of mind, money, muscles reflects that belief. John is a former IT executive for a major Wall Street bank and Air Force veteran. I love this so much. I think I said it last time. He's a husband, father, brother, uncle, as well as a big brother. A claim to fame, John bench pressed 500 pounds at age 55 years old. I think I've only done the most is 10 or 20, just for you to compare. He pressed 500 pounds. I'm like, yeah, I got 20. All right. Now, 10 years older, he's working to get back to that level, and his most recent bench was 465 pounds. He has trained under Tim Grover's tutelage and Omar Periu. His coaching credentials are from David Bayer, Tim Storey, who are incredible souls. He has recently spoken at an event that includes Les Brown. John believes strongly in the power of the universe, God, science, and synchronicity. And may I add, John, he's a very spiritual man. Let me tell you something, everybody. I'm beginning to light up my fire. This is called Spirituality Now podcast. I have served my community for more than 20 years as, quote, spiritual teacher, quote. And the reason I put myself in quotes is because I'm really a practical spiritual teacher, right? And a lot of people ask me, wow, why don't you invite spirituality now? Isn't it about the gurus that lives in the cave in India? No, No, I'm a believer that the spiritual teachers are out there. They are business owners, fathers, mothers, people serving, at the banks, the person that puts in bags your groceries. You never know. One of my teachers said to me, look for the Buddha and you miss the Buddha. Look for the Buddha and you miss the Buddha. And I think the bios of these incredible, successful men, veterans, and business people, Wall Street, amazing beings, it doesn't really pay tribute to the spiritual journey, which is the heroic journey of their soul, all the things that they have gone through. So I just wanted to make my point clear, Mr. Grillo. Welcome to the podcast, love. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Yeah, thank you, Yvonne. I mean, Yvonne and I have been in the Tim Grover realm for about at least 3 years now, if not more. I've lost count, and I've gotten to know Yvonne not as well as I probably want to know her, but fairly well over a good amount of time, and I love her to death, and I'm looking forward to this conversation.
I love that he said he loves me to death because the death is an aspect of the dark side that we both have been infused in really diving deep into this teaching with Tim Grover, that I'm always excited to mention him. So I want to pay tribute to Tim because thanks to him, a lot. And when I say a lot, it's a lot of my guests in this podcast comes from the networking, inner networking, and genuine networking that I have been able to do thanks to have been an alumni of Tim Grover since he started all his online programs and his down and dirty community. So I always like to pay tribute where tribute is due. So, Mr. John, let's begin. So, I love your background, and I think your bio doesn't really pay tribute to the soul that is you. So, walk us a little bit. What is the childhood of John Grillo, whatever you highlight the most, that actually began to pave the path not only of the veteran, of the successful business owner, of the man that succeeds in pressing 500 pounds. I cannot even imagine how that feels. I don't even want to, right? And that actually has incredible spiritual experiences. Let's go in the background. Who is John Grillo that arrived on earth as a child?
Yeah, well, thanks, Yvonne. I always equate this. And I've learned to go deeper in the last 3 or 4 months, probably since we talked the last time. I realized some other things, but I always equate like my awakening, and it's funny because I said I love you to death, right? And we just passed the day of the death a couple of days ago. But I always say that my awakening and my wisdom began with death. Not my death, obviously. I'm still here.
John,
But
so you and I have that in common.
right.
That's why we're bodies. We're dead bodies.
Right. Because again, my father passed away 11 days before my 12th birthday. And, that was a big thing. My dad was my dad, and it wasn't only my dad. I have twin sisters 2 years younger than me, and I had a brother that was just almost 3 years old when my father died. So there was four of us, and we lost a very strong man, and that set us in a different direction than we had currently living up to those first 12 years. And then I was particularly close with my grandfather. And I got even more closer to him, my mother's father, and I got more closer to him after my father died. And very shortly after my father died, I have to go look. I was been thinking about this the last week because the date of when he died is all crisscrossed in my head, and I have to go look. I have the card you get at the funeral home up somewhere, and I have to find that to get the date straight that he actually died, how old I was. But around 2 to 3 years later, after my father died, my grandfather got murdered, right? And that was a huge, huge blow, right? And then, then everything kind of settled down. My mother got remarried. I had a stepfather who was okay, but not really that great. And time went on, and I joined the military. I dropped out of college. I joined the military. And after I got out of the military, I was home about a month, maybe 2 months the most, 8 weeks. I just found a job. That's when I started working down on Wall Street. And my mom was diagnosed with breast cancer. And within 2.5 years, she passed. And she passed when I was 27 years old. And I thought I was an old man when I lost my mother because my father died when I was 12. But basically 27 is a pretty young age to lose your mom too, right? So So all that surrounded me, and I just felt it gave me. I didn't look at it as a gift as it happened, and I'd rather those people have been there my whole life. Most of them could still be here now. Technically, my father would have been like 94, and my mother would have been 86. And but I feel like the gift it gave me was wisdom, and I know I've learned through coaching that life is always working for you. So even when you think it's not working for you,
Yes.
somehow it is. And it may take years to figure that out. I mean, how could your father die and be working for you? Well, obviously, not in the most optimal way, but it gave me gifts and wisdom and perception and things like maturity and things like that I may or may not have gotten had my path been different. I still would have liked to have seen what my life would have been like with my dad, but
Right.
the reality was I couldn't, and that's how that worked.
Mm. John, for you, it's like, hey, I had this. My grandfather was murdered. My mom died when I was 20 something. My father when I was a young boy. And you said something that just lighted up my heart and my mind, and I felt like a really old person. I've been working and supporting people and myself. That's how I started with family constellations therapy, that really goes into the depth of the systemic things that happen in our families, repetitive things that we inherit generation after generation. And a lot of that is murders, death, disease, that people don't understand how systemic it is. But what called my attention is that you said you felt old. And one of my teachers, one time, he said to me, the day your mother and father died, you stop being a child and you start to grow up as an adult. And the first is you stop being a child when your mother dies and you start being an adult, paving your wisdom, paving your path into the wisdom of eldership when your father dies. And isn't that the truth? Because it doesn't matter if we don't see our mom and our dad in our life, if they abandon or something happened. But the day they died, as long as they are alive, we're still children. Even if we're adults, even if we have our SHIT together, the day they died is on us. It's like, wow, I had a mother, I had a father, and now it's up to me, right? And I love that you said life is always working for you. So you didn't see it as a gift that time. When did you started seeing this consistent happiness of death, right? And we'll talk about that in a moment. About this consistent happiness of death, disease, this what is happening. When did you start seeing it as a gift?
Well, I think, well, two things I'll say, by the way. My mother's anniversary of her passing just passed last week, the 27th of October. Okay. So just that coincidentally, so it was like 38 years ago she passed
Wow.
away.
Well, let's
Just,
just take a moment. We honor your mother. I love that. One of my best teachers just passed. Well, it passed many years ago on 31st of October. And John, you want to know something? I had a near that experience, right? Remember, I was
oh, I
dead for
know, I
those of
know.
you who
You're
don't know.
incredible.
You know when I had it?
I
November
think you were
11th.
18. Oh, really? Yeah,
November
and I think
11th.
I saw that somewhere. 11/11. Yeah, I saw that somewhere. Yeah,
So so
yeah.
so we're in the vibe right now. And plus, for those of you who are astrologers, it is Scorpio season, which Scorpio represents death and rebirth. And it's the festival. We're still in the celebration of the dead, by the way, John. In Mexico, it's not only 2 days, November 1st and 2nd, it's also November 3rd, and where we lift up our altars and everything. We've been honoring the spirit of the children, the adults, and the elders. So just for that. So just keep going, because wow, this is
But I'll say, yeah. So I think there was a couple of times I realized it was a gift. I mean, my mom was still alive when I realized my dad's passing and my grandfather's passing was a gift. But I was about 20, so about 8 years later, and a couple of things. One thing happened at 20, and I had a huge spiritual experience just hanging out on the stoop with my friends. A few weeks before I actually signed up to leave for the Air Force, it was summer. It was the summer of 1977. It was hot as hell. We had a huge heat wave, and I signed up in September to go to the Air Force, and I didn't leave till February '78. So like another few months. But when I was contemplating that decision, I had a huge spiritual experience. Just randomly, I was just thinking about something. It's a long story to go into now, but I felt like I got zapped from somewhere above, outside of me, and it was a feeling I never had before or since. And I felt like, oh my God, what just happened? And it was associated to me with God and Jesus, and just I'll be very frank about this. I never turned into some like holy roller, Bible toter, repent. I never turned into one of those guys. I just took it in my as a deep spirituality, and it
Yes.
gave me a lot of faith. And even though throughout my adult life my faith is still waned, and I always say to myself, that experience, my faith should never wane, but sometimes I still lose a little faith, even having had this experience, because I always question my sanity. Did it really happen, or was I crazy? But I know it happened. So that was one of the first things, when I had the spiritual experience, because when my dad died, I was 12 years old, and I was invincible, and I cursed God out. I called him every name in the book for taking my dad away. Right? I didn't care. God couldn't touch me. I was kid, and I was invincible, and I cursed God out like crazy on my street. I remember I was very angry, and
Yes.
so when I got that little gift, that little spiritual, not a little gift, a huge gift, but that spiritual experience, I started realizing, wow. And then, and this is going to sound even sicker, and I think I've told you this, but then once I was in the Air Force, before I had a car, I had to took the bus. I was at a base in like about 3 hours away in Delaware, and I would come home occasionally on the weekends. And before I had a car, I took the Greyhound bus, a couple of times, and I was in the Greyhound bus terminal coming home on a Sunday night, and I saw like a whole mass of people. And reflecting, I know this is going to people are going to think I'm nuts, but it's okay. And reflecting, I think they were all probably dead. But at first I thought they were just real people. But I saw my grandfather, like it was two rows of people. I saw my grandfather smiling at me, like in those rows of people. And it was like, I felt like,
Wow.
I felt like I wasn't supposed to move and go up to them. Somebody might ask me. Nobody has, because I really haven't told that many people this. But
Wow.
but like somebody would say, "Well, why didn't you go up to him?" I felt like I wasn't supposed to move, and he was smiling at me just like my grandfather would have smiled at me. And the thing with my grandfather was, I thought about this. Like, my mother had a sister who got killed as a baby at, like, I think she was 3 years old. It was a car ran her over in the street in Brooklyn, New York. So my grandmother and my grandfather lost this child at 3. And my grandfather got murdered he was 59. I just turned 65. I mean, he was
Wow.
younger than me, So I'm thinking, this man who lost his life, through this crazy way, lost his child, why shouldn't he have this opportunity to see me? And my grandmother, a few years before, actually said that she opened the door of her attic apartment, and my grandfather was there talking to her and saying, "I'm okay, Faye. Everything's okay. I'm all right." So
Wow.
that was another time when I felt like this was a gift for me. It's something that gave me deeper meaning to life, And then finally, then my mother dies, and that was I was kind of angry with that, and sad about that. But then some years later, and I'm going to tell a very brief version of this.
Yes.
I went to a baseball game on the year my dad died in 1969. It turns out a whole bunch of stuff happened, but I've been to hundreds and hundreds of baseball games. I forget them because, they're baseball games, and they're nothing. You just enjoy them while you're sitting in the seat, but you forget them. This was a very memorable game. I didn't never forgot, because another pitcher no-hitted the Mets. It was a big no-hitter. So that's a huge occurrence in a baseball game. And it was 1969, the year the Mets won the World Series. I never, ever, 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 ever forgot this game. Then when I was, I have one child. He was born in 1996. And it was 2003. It was 7 years after he was born. And I was in Houston, Texas, of all places. And I was at a baseball game in Houston, Texas, when I was on a business trip. And I was sitting there, and I thought about it, and I thought about it, and I thought about it. And I looked it up later. The day of that no-hitter, that I went to this only game. And my father had taken me to baseball games before he got sick, and I didn't go to any games in 1969. This was the only game I went to. And then my only child was born on the same day as that game in 1969. That no-hitter in 1969 was September 20th, 1969. My son was born September 20th, 1996. So when I was at that game, I was given a gift of the memory of never forgetting this game. And all these things happen. I could go into now. I won't go into. But all these things happen and make me never forget it. And basically, my son was to be born on that same date, in 1996. And I'm like, so while I was angry at God, he was giving me a gift. I didn't even know it.
I love that. Let's talk about that, John. John, let's talk about that. First of all, I just that your grandfather came to visit you. I just, it just reminded me, when my grandfather died in my arms. I was 12 years old. He had a cerebral stroke, or whatever you call. And he fell, imagine, 12 years old, I'm with him, and boom, he falls. I pick him up. I do not know. It's just only the grace of God that I was able to hold him until my grandmother was arriving. We put him on the bed, and then, they took him to the hospital a couple of days later on August 11th. I was 12 back then. I cannot do the math of age right now, but he died. But I remember a couple of months later, I was at the house of a friend, and I was like studying for a test or something, felt like a little nap or something, and I had a strong visitation. I'm just going to call it like that, where my grandfather was coming down the stairs of the house of my friend, and he said, "Hey, granddaughter, listen to this." I was like, "Grandfather, how are you here?" Well, there's so many things you don't know, but I do want to tell you that heaven is not what you think of. Heaven is what you make of. Whatever you choose to create right now that you are alive in the body, that's going to be either heaven or hell. And boom, he disappeared. That marked my conception, my presence, awareness of heaven since I was, since really young. So I do recognize, one of my teachers, Byron Katie, says that when you have a dream or a vision of someone that died, that's not a vision of or a dream. That's called a holy visitation, that they are actually able to connect with you and contact you for whatever gift of God is giving you. And I love that several times you've said, I got so angry with God. You know why I love that? And some people may be like, Yvonne, how do you dare this blasphemy? Well, don't follow me, right? But
exactly.
But it's that you do have a personal relationship with God, that you are a child of God, and you can say, God, I don't like this, or I like this, and you really are talking like the Son of God to the Father, and the Father is talking to you, and you are like, I'm so mad at you, right? I'm so mad because I'm losing all the people that I love, and then God says, well, in this day, you're going to receive your son, and you receive the greatest gift, right? So your ability to have this personal relationship with God, I think, is so important. I have a question, John. What made you join the army? First of all, thank you so much for your service. And what prompted you to join the army?
I always wanted to ask. The Air Force, yeah. So
the Air Force. Sorry.
There was a lot of different reasons.
Yes.
At the time, I was going to college full time in Manhattan, and I lived in Queens, and I lived in what's called the fare zone. You had to I lived outside, I lived so east. I lived almost where New York City ended. I lived at the very end of New York City, where almost across the street became like Nassau County, Long Island. So you had to take a bus to the subway, and then the subway. So I was commuting. I was commuting to Manhattan to go to Hunter College, and I started doing, what do you do when you're 17, 18, 19 with girls and partying and having a good time? So I only paid attention to my studies sometimes, So in 2 years, I got 1 year's credit. I dropped a lot of courses, and I was like, okay, what am I doing? Then I had a girlfriend who wasn't the best girlfriend for me at the time. And I got to admit, I was a little bit of a coward, but her mother moved to Florida, and she moved to Florida with her mother, and I figured, all right, this is how it ends, and okay. But she came back up to New York about 6, 8 weeks later because she couldn't live without me supposedly, and she wound up like taking a room in a widow's house across the street from me, and then she was almost at my house constantly. So here I was, like going to college, no money, no car, living with my parents, practically living with this girlfriend. I didn't even know how much I wanted to be with her, and I was like, okay, this is nutty. And so now, like, where can I go get somewhere where I can learn a skill, electronics, right? Make some money, get out of my house, go to school at night, which I did. I went to school at night for like 20 something years, after once I went in the Air Force, wound up with a master's degree from an Ivy League school. And then, just go what I want to do. And the added benefit of my dad was in the Navy. My dad was also in the Army Air Corps. My dad got torpedoed and had to swim in the ocean for many hours. I don't even know the whole story, but to survive. My uncles, every one of them was in World War II or the Korean War.
Wow.
So I also felt like, hey, I could also follow the tradition of all these men in my family, and that made me feel good. So I just joined. I
love John. You know why I love that? Why I asked that? Because in the work of family constellation, systemic work, which comes from an incredible man. His name was Bert Hellinger, a psychologist, psychoanalyst. I think that's how you say it in English. Who was working with a lot of veterans and a lot of people from war, and then he found a very, very functional tribe in Africa who was so organized, so functional, so harmonic. He's like, what are they doing that we all that are advanced and have all this technology are so messed up? And so he brought that awareness of family constellations, and he found out that our past, our ancestors, inherited in our DNA, in the genome, in the cellular memory of who we are, the blueprint of who we are. We repeat patterns, and we will look the generations that follow, the ones that choose to have awareness, awakening, like yourself, right? Like to find the gift in the wand. It may not have started with us, the curse of a family, but it can end with us. And he found out, like, usually when you are separated from your father or mother at a young age, the way you connect with them into the future is with loyalty, saying, Dad, Mom, I couldn't be with you, but because I love you, I want to be connected with you. I'll do the same as you. And some people do, I'll do different as you. But it seems to me that this was a bond, like, I will honor the men in my family. I'm one of them, and I will carry your legacy now in a different form for me. So I think it's what you did is a lot of honor, John. Besides, whatever it was benefiting you and helping you through at your young age, but it's a path of honor, of loyalty, of legacy, and honoring the masculine energy in your family. So, John, I have questions. Let's talk before I go into.
Let me just make one point. Let me just make one point based on what you said. Yeah, no. because it's interesting because my son, who as a kid, he's 26 now, right? This guy who was born on September 20th. He wore a lot of Air Force shirts growing up, like almost proud of me. And he said to me one day, like, I'm sorry, like I won't be joining like you did, like almost like I would be disappointed in him. And I'm like, Jason, never, because number one, you're my only kid, you're my only son. And there's lots of crazy stuff going on now in Afghanistan and Iraq and I don't want to lose you to anything crazy at this point. So so I'm fine. And he's turned out to be a great person. So it's kind of funny how you say that, because my son came to me once and almost apologized to me for not joining.
That's beautiful.
So,
You know why? That's beautiful because we do all of this work, hopefully, all of this cleansing of our ancestry, of the trauma, not only of our lives, but for the past, to clear the windshield for the future generations. For them, they'll still have their own things to go through. But if you can give the freedom to the future to not repeat the patterns of the past, and they create their own path, and they carry on with loyalty, the wisdom that they have, without having to do it the same as us, I think that's one of the greatest blessings that you did for your family.
And I agree so much with what you're saying about legacy and the legacy of the bad stuff carrying from generation to generation to generation, the fears and the limiting beliefs and all that limiting
You just
stuff like
changed it.
carrying over. And you're right, we put the stake in the ground and change it. And I think I already see differences in my son that gives me hope, right? So go ahead with your questions. I'm sorry.
But
Go ahead.
just the fact that you could give him the blessing of do it as in your own way. Do it your own way. That's a freedom, and there is in the Analects of Confucius. There's a virtue called filial piety. Filial piety is the true reverence for our parents, for we come from, for our mentors, for our teachers, which I feel is a spiritual disease right now. We don't have it. Our youth, the influencer economy, culture. Well, I don't know if we can call that culture, right? The Kardashian thing. Like, there's so much disrespect for where we come from. There's a lot of fake equality from a mother with a daughter dressing the same, not honoring the age. There's an aspect, natural law aspect, that is being disrespected so much. So anytime that I hear someone respecting the parents, the mentors, the teachers, I'm so devoted to my mentors. Even if they are not present with me, they will be present in my heart. So I will always honor them, my mother, my father, regardless if it worked out or not, because I'm a better person today by what I chose to learn from them or what I chose not to learn from them too. So I feel that filial piety, energy, virtue of honoring is with you and your children, your child. So
thanks, and that's great. That's great. That's great.
If John, let me ask you.
Educational stuff. Go ahead.
Let's move into supporting men. So you now support men in coaching and mentorship. Tell us a little bit about your work with them.
So primarily, whenever you hear about who should be your ideal client in coaching, then you always hear, and I agree with this, like you're your best client, right? So I looked at my journey. And I saw this for years because I started at this company when I was 27, and I was 27, 28 when I started at this company. And I wound up being there until I was 55. And at 55, they kind of drop kicked me out, and I lost this fairly high paying executive job. I was a vice president, at this Wall Street bank. And that led me to a little bit of a spiral for a little while where I didn't have the best self-esteem and got a little depressed. And I had been working out with my trainer 3 times a week, and that kind of got curtailed because I didn't go to work anymore. And I gained a lot of weight. And I was bouncing from, okay, what should I do with this part of my life? And by the way, and here's the date. You talk about 11/11 with your accident. God bless you with that accident, right? The day I got fired, right, I'll give you this date. It was 10/11/12. Okay, 10/11/12. Okay.
Oh my God, I'm loving these. We should tell the editor of the podcast, David, or someone in the Asin team, to put spooky music behind our words.
So, all right, exactly. But here's what happened too. And we just went through, if you read the papers, you may or may not have seen this, or if you heard in the news, but it was just the 10-year anniversary of Hurricane Sandy, that big hurricane we had on the East Coast 10 years ago. So I got fired on 10/11/12, and it was like, whatever date it was, the 26th, the 29th, but I think it was the 28th, actually. 17 days later, we had this hurricane, and then we had no power for 2 weeks. And here I am, okay, I have to find another job. I have to figure out what to do, blah, 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 blah. And here we are with no power for 2 weeks, right? After this crazy traumatic hurricane, which I was pretty lucky. I was in the middle of Long Island, but people in Long Island got flooded like crazy. So now I'm like, what do I do? So you know what I did? Like, this became a new path. I wound up taking a job real fast selling cars. I learned some sales. Maybe I could make some quick money, and I'll figure out the rest from there. So I sold cars for about 6 months, and it was where I worked, there was I had the manager tell us at a sales meeting, lie to your customer. Lie to your customer. That's not me. So I eventually, right before Good Friday, when my son was going to be off from school, I just said, a few days before, I said, look, I'm leaving. I'm not staying here anymore. But I had a good experience learning. So all that stuff, I eventually figured out I lost weight. I got into coaching. I got into mindset, like learning mindset techniques. I got certain, I did all this stuff. I just knowing that there are a lot of men like me who are out of shape, who have lost their mojo, who need to reclaim their wallet. Men who haven't even saved for their retirement. They haven't saved for their kids' colleges, right? They just think it's gonna, they just keep going day to day in the hamster wheel. They put their head in the sand, and with these techniques I've used I've learned to clear limiting beliefs. I just
Yes.
know, like the same stuff I used to help myself, I know I could use to help them. So that's how
Right.
that all evolved.
Yeah, and you have evidence-based living that, I mean, you've gone through every single possible thing: loss,
Right.
grief, death, murders, being fired. And I think that for men out there that feel, you are not powerless because you have these challenging experiences. You are actually powerful when you tap into the strength that vulnerability will give you, to us, be guided by a mentor, a coach, especially for those who have gone through hell before you, and probably deeper hell, so they can help you, right, get out of that. So I
Yeah.
love that you're doing this work. You're also a public speaker. Tell me a little bit how was speaking
Yeah. So
like,
that was a virtual event.
okay,
Um, so not unfortunately, but most of the events I have gotten to speak at are virtual events because of COVID, right? I just started speaking, and now I'm looking to speak more, get on stages. But that aside,
right.
this event was interesting, and that the person who put on the event, I did some teaching, I did some coaching. I took one of his coaching programs, and I got to introduce Les Brown. Like Les Brown was the headliner, and I spoke right before Les Brown. So, and I stayed within my time, but they were telling me to get off because they want the Les Brown to come on. But I'm like, I'm using my time. I'm sorry, but I got to introduce Les Brown. Which was like a lot of fun, and and I feel like I still am working on my speaking skills. I'm
I
still
think
like,
that we never stop doing that, for
yeah,
me,
exactly,
every
exactly.
time. Yeah.
I
That's
want to
how
be I want to be
how you
more
learn to
me.
speak is practice, right?
Right, right. And to find yourself, because, and even Tim said this sometimes, because Tim is obviously our mentor, Tim Grover. He's talked about being on stages, all the time. And I know you've got to see him speak a few times live. I see the pictures, maybe the who's its events, the 10X events, but he's also talked about, some of the guys who were funny, like they were funny, they made you laugh, but did you even remember what they said? But at the same time, like, I'm a pretty
Oh,
funny
that's
guy.
good. That's good. That's
Remember when he
good.
said that? Yeah,
Yeah, now I remember now.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And I'm a pretty funny guy. And I want to be more funny when I speak, but keeping that balance between being funny and being serious to give the correct information to serve the people. And I find myself sometimes, in my perception, maybe not totally, but being too serious during my talks. So I want to find a little bit more balance, and maybe not, and heed the warning that Tim Grover gave us. Hey, yeah, those funny guys, you don't even remember what they said, right? But still find a little balance of my humor, because that's part of me. That's a big part of me. So it's and the coach that you mentioned in my introduction, Omar Periu, who's a very successful businessman. He's worked with some of I don't remember his name. Kevin Harrington, who's one of the sharks, right?
Oh
In
yeah, he's
in
great.
Shark
Yes.
Tank, right? And a few other. I mean, he's worked with a lot of famous guys. He's coached a lot of famous guys. Omar right now is currently my speaking coach, so I'm working with him on some of my speaking techniques. So it's a work in progress, like anything else, right? So
Yes,
that's
yes.
that's how that goes.
So that's amazing. So tell us a little bit about your future goals. What are you offering right now? Where can people find you?
Yeah. So my future goals is to live my best life, is
Mhm.
to have the balance. And I know, and I love what another Tim Grover is, right? Balance is zero on the scale. So I don't even like to use the
I
word
agree
balance
with him.
anymore.
I'm about to say something about
Yeah, it just slipped out. But so what's the word we use as substitute for balance? But have the have the total spectrum, right, of being lucrative and serving people, being lucrative, being able to do what I want in my own life for my own leisure and travel, and just have that total freedom where I've always felt. Because I was one thing I didn't mention when I talked about my whole life story. I did mention my siblings, but I'm the oldest, right? So being the oldest, when my dad died, and then my mother had to have a little bit of social life, go play mahjong, go play cards. So I would be like mind my brother, at 12, 13, and she'd go out for a few hours, and it was me, my sisters, and my brother, and I was like the oldest and in charge, right? And
Right.
so I always had all this responsibility, and even at work, at Wall Streets and computers always broke, and you'd be surprised how many people just go home from work even when stuff has to be done, right? In a
Right.
corporate world, like I don't know how they got away with it, but I always had that responsibility, and I worked a lot of nights and weekends because I had to, not because I was workaholic.
Mm,
And now I want to feel that freedom, and I want to have it all, right? So that's how I see
I
it.
love that.
And I would love to, anybody who's listening, who I would love to spend some time, on the phone with them, just kind
Yes.
of going over what their needs are. And again, my website, I know you'll publish this, but my website's jgvoltcoaching.com.
Yeah, we'll
And
make
my
sure to share it with everyone.
right. And my email is info@jgvoltcoaching.com. And I could
Perfect.
send anybody who reaches out to me an email a link to set up some time with me, free time, right? Just to go
Awesome.
over, just to go over, what what they think is ailing them. People don't even, a lot of people like you do, we do, people that we meet in these circles do, but a lot of people don't even, they just kind of go like robots, and they don't spend the time to go, wait, I'm in a comfort zone that I'm not even paying attention to my mind and myself and everything I would like to do. And I just keep rolling. And I want to
Right.
help people like break out of that. Right.
Love that. Love that. John, it's been like incredible to have you here. I really feel that, eventually, you can come back and we'll just dive deep into like, how was it this apparition? How was it to talk to
Right.
your grandfather? I
Right.
think
Right.
it's
Right.
a great introduction for the world, especially for men. I've been very blessed to be a support, a witness, and also a student of great men in my life, especially men that have worked in something called the Mankind Project, men initiations, men rituals of passage, rites of passage and everything. And I do know as a woman that for men, the support of other men is not only essential but vital. You can get all the support from women too. However, it takes a man to lead a man into deeper mastery of his own manhood. So, as a mother of boys, I thank you, beloved John, for the work you are doing, for supporting others, or for defying the odds. And I can't wait to see how much weight you're going to lift. And I'll next time that I have that 20 pound, I'm gonna go like 25 pound in honor of
Yeah.
John Grillo.
And here's the thing too. I had COVID for 10 weeks in the summer, and I
Oh
had
my
to like
God.
go back in the mid 300s, and I'm working my way back again. So
I, I can't, I
it's
can't,
a
I can't,
process.
I can't
It's a
with that.
process.
It is a process, and I can't deal with that. I'll still gonna be lifting the 20 pounds, and I don't know if my trainer is gonna listen to this.
Look,
He's gonna be like,
you are one of the strongest persons I know. Whether no matter how,
mental, yes,
yeah, and
spiritually
you lift
too.
1,000,000 pounds, right?
Oh,
Yeah.
well,
So
physical. I don't know. I like to be honest with my flaws too. So anywho's beloved John, thank you so much for joining us
okay, we'll
today.
talk soon, Levon.
Yeah,
Love
and
you to death.
and
We'll see you.
everybody, wait. So everybody, followed Mr. Grillo. We make sure to put his website, his email, everything for you. Remember, the Spirituality Now podcast is a philanthropic-based podcast. It is, produced and promoted by Del Flor Teachings, a company of spiritual and systemic coaching, mentorship, and consulting company for corporations and individuals to get you all into the juiciness of owning your dad, owning your life, getting out there into the world fully trustworthy, healed, sustained, and integrated as a spiritual, active, on earth, practical human being. We're also produced by Authority Syndication Marketing, as in media, an incredible team that they support us. And we keep the podcast philanthropic based, so we don't bring you commercials selling this, selling that, so you can get the incredible wisdom of our guests like Mr. John Grillo free of any other influence. So you get to receive this pure essence and wisdom of them. Thank you, John. Thank you, everyone. We will see you next week. Same channels, iTunes, Spotify, podcast in Apple, Amazon, your Alexa, Sonos, everywhere where podcasts are. iHeartRadio, we are there. It's free, Spirituality Now podcast. Give it a follow, share, and we'll see you next time. Les mando un beso. ¡Mua! Adios. Thank you for listening to the Spirituality Now podcast. Be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcasting platform and share us with a friend. To learn more about how to live more present in the moment and take your faith into action, visit delaflorteachings.com/faith to access the free training of 21 Days of Faith in Action today.